Family helps family, right? My father insisted when I discovered they'd secretly sold my car. I reported it as stolen. The next day, I packed my stuff. I'm 23. I always thought blood meant something. That family would have your back when no one else would. That's what my parents drilled into me since I was old enough to understand words. But that was before they sold my car. My phone buzzed at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was 3 weeks into my internship in Chicago, 1,000 miles from home. The screen showed my neighbor's name. She never called. Never. My heart lurched as I answered. The neighbor's voice came through, tight with concern. She'd seen someone drive away my car yesterday. She thought I should know. My throat went dry. My 2015 Honda Civic, the one I'd saved for since I was 16. The one I'd bought with my own money after 3 summers of mowing lawns and 2 years working nights at the grocery store. The car I'd left safely parked in my parents' driveway because they promised to keep an eye on it. I asked if she was certain it was mine. The blue one with the dent in the back bumper. Yes, she was sure. I called my parents immediately. No answer. I texted. Nothing. The knot in my stomach tightened. 3 hours later, my dad finally called back. His voice casual. Too casual, as if he didn't know why I was calling. As if he hadn't been avoiding me. I told him about our neighbor's call, about my missing car. A pause, too long. My father cleared his throat. He said they were going to tell me this weekend. Andy needed some help. Andy, my brother, the family favorite, always in debt, always with a new scheme, always being bailout out by my parents while I worked for everything I had. What does Andy have to do with my car? He was in a tight spot, owed some money to some people, bad people, Nick. We had to help him out. My chest tightened. I already knew where this was going. So you gave him my car? Not exactly. Well, we sold it to help him cover what he owed. I couldn't believe they'd sold my car without asking me. Dad's voice hardened. It was an emergency, Nick. These people were threatening him. What were we supposed to do? Not sell something that wasn't theirs to sell, I thought. The words came out harsher than I'd intended. Dad's tone changed immediately. Don't raise your voice at me, young man. Family looks out for family. Andy would do the same for you. He's your brother. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. No, Andy wouldn't, and it wasn't their decision to make. Dad promised they'd make it up to me once things settled down. I asked how much they'd gotten for it. Another pause, 4,000. Less than half what it was worth. My hands trembled with rage. I asked who bought it and where the money was. Dad admitted they'd given it to Andy to pay off his debt. Of course they had. My car was gone and I didn't even have the money from its sale. Just the knowledge that my cousin's problems were temporarily solved until his next crisis. I told Dad I was coming home that weekend. We were going to fix this. I hung up before he could respond. The next 3 days crawled by. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my car driving away without me, my freedom vanishing in a cloud of exhaust. I kept checking my bank account, as if the numbers might magically increase, as if my parents might have deposited the money they owed me. Nothing changed. The balance remained painfully inadequate to replace what I'd lost. My supervisor noticed my distraction, asked if everything was okay. I mumbled something about family issues and promised to catch up on my work over the weekend. Another lie in a growing pile. I wouldn't be catching up on anything except the betrayal waiting for me back home. Friday night, I took a bus home, 10 hours of seething rage and betrayal. By the time I walked through my parents' front door, I was a hurricane in human form. My mother rushed to hug me. I stepped back, asked where Dad was. Mom's face fell. She knew I was upset, she said. I replied that upset didn't begin to cover it. Dad sat at the kitchen table, coffee mug in hand. He looked smaller somehow. Less like the man who taught me to throw a baseball and more like someone I didn't recognize. He started to speak, but I cut him off, asked for Andy's address. Dad suggested we talk first. I repeated my demand, his address. Now, Dad sighed, wrote it on a napkin, and slid it across the table. I turned to leave. Mom called after me. Andy wasn't there. He'd left town right after everything happened. Of course he had, typical Andy, take the money and run. I asked who they'd sold my car to. They exchanged glances. A dealership in Riverdale, Boyd's Auto Sales. I knew the place, everyone did. Jimmy Boyd was notorious for shady deals and overpriced lemons. My car deserved better. Nick, wait, my mother pleaded. We were desperate. Andy was in real trouble. So am I shot back. I'm in real trouble right now. The difference is I didn't create my problem. You did. The drive to Riverdale took 40 minutes. Each mile fueled my determination. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about respect, about boundaries, about standing up for myself when my own family wouldn't. I spotted my car immediately. Front row, freshly washed, with a price tag of $9,500 on the windshield, more than double what my parents had sold it for. My blood boiled. The office door jingled as I walked in. Jimmy Boyd looked up from his desk, all fake smiles and slick-back hair. What can I do for you today, young man? Looking for your first car? I'm looking for my car, the blue Honda Civic out front, the one you bought from my parents without my permission. His smile faltered for just a second before returning, wider and faker than before. That vehicle was purchased legally. I have the paperwork right here. He patted a folder on his desk. My name's on the title, I said. Not my parents. That stopped him, his eyes narrowed. That's not what they told me. I bet it isn't. I pulled out my phone, showed him a photo of the title with my name clearly visible. I'd taken the picture when I first bought the car, proud of my accomplishment. Now it was evidence. Boyd's expression darkened. Look, kid, I paid cash for that car, fair and square. What happened between you and your parents isn't my problem. Actually, it is. You bought stolen property. I bought it from your parents. Without the owner's consent, that's theft by conversion. Thank God for that business law class last semester. Boyd's face darkened. He stood up, using his height to tower over me. He told me to get out of his office before he called the police. I smiled, a cold, hard smile that felt foreign on my face. I encouraged him to do just that, save me the trouble. The police would love to hear about how he was selling a car with an improper title transfer. We stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Finally, he broke. He asked what I wanted. My car back, I said. He laughed. An ugly sound, not happening, he said. Best he could do was sell it to me. 10 grand. I pointed out he just put $9,500 on the windshield. Price went up, he smirked. I felt something shift inside me. A lifetime of being the reasonable one, the responsible one, the one who fixed things rather than broke them. It all fell away. Keep the car, I said quietly. But know this, I'm filing a police report for theft. I'm contacting the DMV about fraudulent title transfer. I'm calling the Better Business Bureau. And I'm going to stand outside your lot every weekend with a sign telling everyone how you knowingly bought a stolen car. His face paled slightly. I wouldn't, he said. Try me, I replied. I walked out, phone already in hand, dialing the local police department. 2 hours later, I stood in the police station filing a report. The officer looked skeptical at first, but the title was in my name. The evidence was clear. He promised they'd look into it. Meanwhile, I shouldn't approach Boyd again. I nodded, though I had no intention of backing down. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. My parents. Calling, texting, pleading for me to come home so we could work this out as a family. I ignored them all. That night I stayed at a motel. Couldn't bear the thought of sleeping under their roof, not after what they'd done. I thought about all the times I'd bailaid Andy out. The money I'd loaned him over the years, knowing I'd never see it again. The excuses I'd made for him to teachers, to coaches, to girls he'd stood up. The way I'd always been expected to look out for my older brother, even though he was supposed to be the one setting an example. The messes I'd helped clean up because that's what family did. But this was different. This wasn't me choosing to help. This was them taking from me without asking, without permission, without respect. Morning came with a call from the police officer. He informed me they'd spoken with Boyd. He'd agreed to return the vehicle to me. My heart leapt. When I asked, today at noon, at the station, they'd supervised the exchange. Relief washed over me. Then suspicion. I asked if there was a catch. No catch, the officer assured me, though Boyd did say to tell me he wouldn't forget this. A threat thinly veiled, but I didn't care. I was getting my car back. At 11:30, my phone rang again, my mother. Nikki, please, your father and I are so sorry. We never meant to hurt you. But you did. We were trying to help Andy. You know how he gets when he's desperate. And what about me? Didn't I deserve your help too? Of course you do, but you're strong, Nick. You've always been the strong one, the responsible one. We knew you'd be okay. And there it was, the truth I'd always suspected but never wanted to face. To my family, my reliability was a weakness to be exploited, not a strength to be respected. I have to go, I said. Wait, your father talked to Andy. He's going to pay you back every penny. I almost laughed. No, he won't, and you know it. At noon, I stood in the police station watching Jimmy Boyd hand over my keys. His eyes burned with hatred, but he forced a smile for the officer's benefit. He suggested there were no hard feelings, just a misunderstanding. I didn't respond, just took my keys and walked out, my car, my freedom, back where it belonged, but something still felt wrong, incomplete. I drove to my parents' house one last time. They were waiting on the porch, faces anxious and hopeful, as if this could all be smoothed over with an apology and a family dinner. You got your car back, my mother rushed down the steps. Oh, Nick, we're so glad, so glad. My father approached more cautiously, reading my expression. Son, we know we messed up, we'll make it right. I looked at them both, really looked. Saw not the parents I'd idolized growing up, but two people who'd betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. I was moving the rest of my stuff out today, I told them quietly. I wouldn't be coming back. Their faces fell in unison. Nick, no, my mother pleaded. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. We were trying to protect Andy. And who was protecting me? They had no answer for that. I packed my things quickly. Clothes, books, the few mementos I still wanted. It all fit in my car. My computer was next. The expensive gaming system I'd spent months saving for. The books I'd collected since high school. The guitar I'd taught myself to play. Each item a piece of me, a testament to my hard work, my determination. I wondered if they'd have sold these two if Andy had needed more money. Probably. As I loaded the last box, my phone buzzed with a text. Andy, hey bro, heard what happened. Sorry about the car thing. I'll pay you back soon, promise. Empty words from an empty person. I blocked his number without replying. My mother stood in the doorway, crying quietly as I got into my car. My father stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, his face a mask of regret. For a moment, I hesitated. Years of conditioning, of being the fixer, the peacemaker, almost pulled me back into their orbit. But then I remembered my car, sitting in that sleazy lot with a price tag that mocked my hard work. I remembered the casual way they dismissed my feelings, my property, my boundaries. I started the engine. Nick, please, my mother called out. Don't do this, we can work it out. I looked at them one last time. No, we can't, not anymore. I drove away, watching them shrink in my rearview mirror until they disappeared completely. The weight on my chest didn't lift immediately. There was grief mixed with the anger, loss tangled with relief. But with each mile that passed, I felt something new growing in its place. Something that felt strangely like freedom. My phone kept buzzing. I pulled over and blocked their numbers too. No more guilt trips, no more manipulation, no more being the family safety net. The road ahead was uncertain. I had an internship to finish, a final year of college to complete, a life to build on my own terms. But for the first time, I would be building it for myself, not as someone's backup plan, not as the responsible one who could be counted on to sacrifice when others wouldn't, just as Nick, driving his own car, following his own path. The dashboard clock read 7:15 p.m., the exact time 3 weeks ago when my parents had sold my car out from under me. Sometimes an ending is really a beginning. Sometimes losing something shows you what you never should have tolerated in the first place. I thought about the years ahead. Graduation, a job, a place of my own, all the normal milestones of adulthood, but with one crucial difference. I would be facing them alone. No family dinners, no holiday gatherings, no safety net if I failed. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like throwing open a window in a stuffy room, like taking the first deep breath after nearly drowning. My phone buzzed one more time, a voicemail notification. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. It was Andy, slurring his words slightly, probably drunk. Again, heard you got the car back, he said. That's cool, man, really cool. But listen, those guys I owed money to, they're still pretty pissed. I might need to borrow some cash, just for a little while. You know how it is. Family helps family, right? I deleted the message, blocked his new number too. Family helps family. That's what they'd always told me. What they'd used to justify every unreasonable demand, every one-sided sacrifice. But they'd never specified what helping looked like. Never clarified that it shouldn't leave you empty, shouldn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. The highway stretched before me, a ribbon of possibility in the gathering darkness. My headlights cut through the night, illuminating just enough road to move forward, 1 mile at a time, one decision at a time. The radio played softly in the background, some songs about breaking free, finding yourself, the kind of thing that usually made me roll my eyes. Now it felt like the soundtrack to my life. The truth about my family had definitely made me miserable, but freedom, that was starting to feel pretty good. By midnight, I'd crossed the state line. The road signs welcomed me to Illinois, to my new life. My phone had finally stopped buzzing. Either they'd given up or they'd run out of new numbers to call from. Either way, the silence was blissful. I checked into another motel just outside of Chicago. This one was slightly nicer than the last, a small celebration of my victory, of reclaiming what was mine and walking away from what wasn't serving me. The room was clean, the bed comfortable. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply without dreams. Morning came with a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. I showered, dressed, and headed back to my internship apartment, back to the life I was building for myself. The city skyline appeared on the horizon, a jagged silhouette against the brightening sky. All those buildings, all those people, all those possibilities. I wondered if my parents had tried to call the company where I was interning, if they'd attempted to track me down that way. Probably. They weren't the type to let go easily. But it didn't matter. I was an adult. This was my life, my choice. My car hummed beneath me, a constant reminder of what I'd fought for, what I'd won back. I parked in the garage beneath my building and carried my belongings up to my small studio apartment. It wasn't much. A bed, a desk, a kitchenette barely big enough to turn around in. But it was mine. A space no one could invade without my permission. As I unpacked, I found a photo that had slipped between the pages of a book. Me at 16, washing my car for the first time, grinning with pride. My dad in the background, watching with what I'd always thought was approval. Now I wondered if it had been something else. Calculation, assessment of an asset that might someday be useful. I set the photo aside. Not everything needed to be figured out today. My supervisor called as I was putting away the last of my clothes, asked how the family emergency had worked out. Better than expected, I told him. I'd be back at work on Monday. The weekend stretched before me, 2 days to adjust to my new reality, to process what had happened and decide what came next. I spent Saturday exploring Chicago on foot, places I'd been meaning to visit but hadn't made time for. The Art Institute, Navy Pier, Millennium Park, tourist spots, yes, but I'd never given myself permission to be a tourist in my temporary home. Sunday, I did laundry, grocery shopped, cooked a real meal for the first time in weeks. Small, ordinary tasks that felt newly significant. This was what independence looked like, taking care of myself because I wanted to, not because someone else needed something from me. Monday morning, I drove to work. My car was no longer just transportation, but a symbol of boundaries held, of self-respect demanded, of freedom claimed. The truth was too complicated to explain. How do you tell someone that losing your family feels like finding yourself? That cutting ties can be a kind of connection to your own worth, your own values, your own strength. The weeks passed, then months. My internship ended, but they offered me a job for after graduation. I accepted. Chicago was growing on me, a city where no one knew me as anyone's son or cousin, where I could define myself on my own terms. Sometimes late at night, I'd wonder about them, if they missed me, if they regretted what they'd done, but those moments grew less frequent, less painful. And then one day, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened. but curiosity won out again. Inside was a check for $4,000 and a note, "We were wrong, we're sorry, when you're ready, we're here." No manipulation, no guilt trip, just an acknowledgement and space. I folded the note and put it in my desk drawer, deposited the check. They owed me that much at least, but I didn't call, wasn't ready yet, might never be. And that was okay. The trust that had been broken couldn't be repaired with money or words. Only time would tell if it could be rebuilt at all. Meanwhile, I had a life to live, my life, on my terms. I turned up the radio and pressed down on the gas pedal. My car responded instantly, carrying me forward, away from what had been and toward what could be. To everyone who's ever been taken for granted by the people who should value them most, your worth isn't determined by how much you'll sacrifice for others. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say no. Set boundaries. Walk away.
It's just a silly nickname, Mom scoffed when I found out she saved me as cash cow. I closed my bank accounts that night. Months later, they begged me. I, 34F, recently discovered something that changed my entire perspective on my family. For years, I've been the dutiful daughter, reliable, hardworking, and always there when my parents needed financial support. My brother Alex was always the golden child, while I was treated as an afterthought. I've suspected the imbalance for years, but I never imagined Thanksgiving dinner would be the moment everything finally became clear. Growing up, the favoritism toward Alex was painfully obvious. While my parents attended every one of his little league games and school performances, they consistently missed my honor society inductions and debate competitions. I still remember the sting of scanning the audience for their faces during my valedictorian speech, only to find empty seats. They had taken Alex shopping for new soccer equipment instead. When I confronted them later, my mother simply shrugged and said, "Your brother needed us more." It became their mantra, the explanation for every inequity in our household. Their justification was always the same: "Your brother struggles more than you do, you're naturally gifted." Their words implied it was a compliment, but the message was clear: my achievements were expected and therefore unremarkable, while his mediocrity deserved celebration. By the time I turned 16, I was essentially raising myself. I took a part-time job at the local grocery store to pay for my own clothes, school supplies, and even my prom dress. Meanwhile, my parents were busy chauffeuring Alex to parties and covering his expenses. I became the default babysitter whenever they wanted a night out, forced to cancel my own plans at the last minute. "You're more responsible," they'd say, not realizing they had forced that responsibility upon me. College was where the disparity became undeniable. Despite my perfect GPA and scholarship offers, my parents refused to contribute a dime toward my education. "We can't afford to support both of you," they claimed, yet they covered Alex's tuition in full, along with his apartment, meal plan, and car. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing on weekends, tutoring between classes, and pulling night shifts at a 24-hour convenience store. I lived on ramen and coffee, pulling all-nighters to maintain my grades while earning enough to stay enrolled. Meanwhile, Alex partied through his freshman year and dropped out with no consequences. Despite everything, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance. No one from my family attended the ceremony. Alex had a hangover and my parents stayed home to take care of him. I told myself it didn't matter as I accepted my diploma, but the absence of cheers when my name was called left an emptiness I couldn't ignore. My early career became my salvation. I landed a position at a prestigious financial consulting firm and moved 3 states away. The distance provided perspective, though I maintained obligatory holiday visits and weekly phone calls. When I met Daniel, whose family celebrated each other's successes and shared burdens equally, I finally understood what healthy family dynamics looked like. His parents welcomed me warmly, proudly displaying my professional headshot alongside family photos. The contrast to my own upbringing was stark and painful. My parents' financial recklessness had been evident for decades. They'd refinanced their house 3 times to fund lavish vacations and my father's classic car hobby. Despite earning good salaries, they lived perpetually beyond their means, juggling credit cards and taking out personal loans to maintain appearances. 5 years ago, the inevitable crisis hit when my father took early retirement without adequate savings, and my mother's online shopping addiction spiraled out of control. They called me in tears, facing possible foreclosure after missing 3 mortgage payments. Their credit cards were maxed out, and they had already borrowed from other family members who refused to lend more. Despite Daniel's serious concerns, I agreed to help temporarily with $500 monthly, viewing it as my filial duty. That amount gradually increased as they presented seemingly endless emergencies: medical bills, car repairs, property taxes. Within 2 years, I was sending $1,500 monthly while raising my own son, Jackson. Each time I tried to discuss financial planning or budgeting with them, they deflected or became defensive. The truth I didn't want to acknowledge was that I wasn't helping them through a temporary rough patch. I was subsidizing their fundamentally unsustainable lifestyle. What hurt most was discovering that my parents were still supporting Alex financially, despite him being perfectly capable of working. At 32, he lived in their basement, occasionally picking up bartending shifts, but mostly gaming and dating a series of girlfriends who quickly grew tired of his immaturity. When I questioned this arrangement, my mother became defensive. "Your brother is finding himself," she insisted. "Besides, you're doing so well, you can afford to help us." Last Thanksgiving finally exposed the truth I'd been too loyal to see. I spent days preparing a perfect meal, cleaning our home, and arranging guest rooms for my parents and Alex. Daniel took Jackson to the park that morning so I could focus on cooking. When my parents arrived, their criticism began immediately. The guest room was too impersonal. The turkey looked a bit dry. My mother rearranged my table settings while sighing about how I'd never had her eye for detail. Alex showed up 2 hours late without the dessert he'd promised to bring. Rather than apologizing, he complained about traffic and immediately commanded the television to watch football. My parents fawned over him, serving him the choicest portions while he sprawled on my sofa, dropping crumbs on the carpet I'd just steam cleaned. Not once did anyone thank me for my efforts. The revelation came from an unexpected source. Jackson, my 6-year-old son, had been playing with my mother's phone while she was in the bathroom. His innocent question silenced the room. "Mommy, why does Grandma have you saved as cash cow in her phone?" My heart stopped. The room went silent except for Alex's poorly suppressed snicker. I felt blood rush to my face as I processed what my son had just revealed. Years of suspicions crystallized in that moment. I looked at my mother, giving her the chance to explain, to deny, to claim it was some kind of joke. "It's just a silly nickname," she stammered, snatching her phone from Jackson's small hands. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by his mashed potatoes. "A nickname," I repeated, my voice unnaturally calm. "Is that what I am to you, a source of income?" My father's face reddened. "After everything we've done for you, you're going to make a scene over something so trivial." Everything they'd done for me? The audacity of his statement broke something inside me. 28 years of suppressed hurt and anger boiled over as I recounted every soccer game they'd missed, every achievement they'd ignored, every financial burden they'd placed on me while rescuing Alex from his self-created problems. Alex rolled his eyes. "Oh please, you're not special because you have a job. Some of us have had a harder time figuring things out. It's not like you can't afford to help out." That's when my mother said the words I'll never forget. "Well, what else would we call you? It's your duty to support us. We raised you, now you owe us." In that instant, I saw my family clearly for the first time. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was an investment that had matured, a resource to be tapped, an ATM with no withdrawal limit. The room spun as 3 decades of gaslighting, manipulation, and emotional neglect fell into place like a terrible puzzle. "I think you should leave," I said quietly, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. "All of you, now." My father's face contorted in shock. "You can't be serious. It's Thanksgiving." "I'm very serious. I want you out of my house." Daniel, who had witnessed the entire exchange, stood firmly beside me. "You heard her. I'll help you gather your things." My mother burst into tears, not from remorse but from indignation. "How dare you treat us this way after all we've sacrificed for you?" They left in a flurry of slammed doors and bitter accusations. Only after their car disappeared down our street did I collapse into a chair, my body shaking with sobs while Daniel held me. Jackson stood confused in the doorway, his small face twisted with concern. "Did I do something wrong, Mommy?" I pulled him into my arms. "No, baby, you did something very right. You told the truth." That night, after putting Jackson to bed with extra stories and reassurance, I sat at my computer and canceled the automatic transfers to my parents' account. I blocked their numbers temporarily, not out of spite, but because I needed clarity without their manipulations clouding my judgment. Daniel contacted our financial advisor the next morning to review our budget and ensure my parents couldn't access any of our accounts. 3 days later, I sent them an email detailing my decision to end financial support. I listed the years of favoritism, the emotional neglect, and the one-sided financial relationship. I explained that any future relationship would need to be based on mutual respect, not monetary transactions. Their response was predictably manipulative. How could I abandon them in their time of need? Didn't I remember all they'd sacrificed for me? What kind of daughter leaves her parents destitute? I didn't respond. Their words no longer held power over me. The following weeks brought escalating pressure tactics. My parents showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted them out. They enlisted aunts, uncles, and family friends to bombard me with guilt-tripping messages. My mother threatened that I'd never see my grandmother Rose again, the only family member who had ever truly supported me. This wasn't the first time our extended family had witnessed the disparity. During my college years at a family reunion, I'd overheard my aunt questioning my parents about why they weren't contributing to my education while paying for Alex's expenses. "She's doing fine on her own," my father had replied dismissively. "She's always been independent." The family had nodded along, accepting this framing of exploitation as a virtue, as if my self-sufficiency justified abandonment rather than resulted from it. My cousins received generous support from their parents, yet criticized me when I expressed frustration about my situation. "At least your parents let you make your own decisions," they'd say, completely missing the point. Now, the family fractured along these same established lines. My father's siblings insisted that family supports family, conveniently forgetting how my parents had failed to support me when I needed them. My uncle, who had always enabled my father's poor financial choices by lending him money, was particularly vocal. "After all they sacrificed to raise you, this is how you repay them," he texted. My mother's younger sister, however, called me privately to admit she'd always seen how unfairly I'd been treated. "You were parenting yourself while they spoiled Alex rot," she confessed. "I should have said something sooner. We all should have intervened." Alex's reaction was the most volatile. His angry calls and texts accused me of selfishness and cruelty. "They'll lose the house because of you," he raged. "Where am I supposed to live?" The irony that he, a healthy, educated, able-bodied man in his 30s, was more concerned about his living situation than finding employment was apparently lost on him. When his tirades failed to sway me, Alex's tactics shifted. He created a family group chat excluding me, where he painted himself as the concerned son trying to save our parents from their ungrateful daughter. When several relatives began to question his version of events, he abandoned that approach and tried a different angle. 2 months after Thanksgiving, he showed up at my workplace disheveled and seemingly remorseful. "I've been thinking about everything," he said, eyes downcast in practiced contrition. "Maybe I've taken advantage of Mom and Dad, and you." He asked if we could talk over lunch, his tone suggesting a breakthrough. I cautiously agreed. Any hope of genuine change evaporated 20 minutes into our conversation. After a superficial apology, he revealed his true purpose. He needed $8,000 for a business opportunity that would turn everything around. When I declined, his facade crumbled immediately. "This is why nobody actually likes you," he spat. "You think you're better than everyone because you have a job and a house. You've always been stuck up." He stormed out, leaving me to pay for the untouched meals. Next, he targeted grandmother Rose, visiting her at the assisted living facility with fabricated stories about my husband and me experiencing marital problems and financial difficulties. "She won't ask for help," he told Rose, "but she really needs support right now." His aim was transparent. He hoped Rose would offer money that he could intercept. Fortunately, Rose saw through his manipulation and alerted me immediately. I redirected my energy toward creating the loving family environment I'd never had. Jackson deserved better than to witness toxic family dynamics. Daniel and I took him camping, helped with his science projects, and cheered embarrassingly loud at his t-ball games. Most importantly, we celebrated his efforts regardless of outcome, making sure he knew his worth wasn't tied to his achievements. As for grandmother Rose, I reached out directly to her assisted living facility. The staff helped arrange private visits without my parents' knowledge. At 86, she was still sharp as a tack and immediately sensed something was wrong. When I explained the situation, she nodded knowingly. "Your mother was always jealous of you," she said, patting my hand. Your independence threatened her. Some parents want their children to fly, others prefer to clip their wings to keep them close. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I received a terse email from my father. Without my monthly contributions, they were struggling to maintain their lifestyle. He'd been forced to return to work part-time as a consultant, something he described as humiliating at his age. My mother had started selling her designer handbags and jewelry on consignment, each sale a personal affront in her mind. Alex was still unemployed and showing no signs of helping. 6 months in, the situation deteriorated further. A mutual friend mentioned that my parents' house was in pre-foreclosure. When I expressed concern, she revealed what my parents had hidden from everyone. Alex had accumulated nearly $150,000 in gambling debts over several years, and my parents had drained their retirement accounts to bail him out multiple times. They had also taken out a second mortgage 3 years earlier, something they had never disclosed to me while pleading for monthly support. The revelation explained why my temporary financial assistance had never seemed to improve their situation. I'd been unknowingly throwing money into the black hole of Alex's addiction and my parents' enablement. The most disturbing detail was that they had known about Alex's gambling problem for nearly a decade. Instead of getting him professional help, they had shielded him from consequences, believing they could manage the situation by paying off his debts and hiding the truth from the family. My financial support hadn't been supplementing their retirement. It had been enabling a destructive cycle while they maintained the illusion of normalcy. This revelation should have angered me, but instead I felt a profound sadness. They had enabled his self-destruction while exploiting my success. Neither approach had helped him become a functional adult. By attempting to protect Alex from consequences, they'd ensured he would never develop the resilience or responsibility he needed. 1 year after the cash cow revelation, my life had transformed. I'd received a significant promotion at work, and Daniel and I had renovated our home to include a comfortable guest suite for grandmother Rose, who now lived with us full-time. Her stories about my mother's childhood helped me understand, though not excuse, the toxic patterns that had shaped our family. My parents eventually sold their house, once the pride of the family with its swimming pool and renovated kitchen, for far less than market value due to the desperate need for a quick sale. They used the proceeds to pay off Alex's most pressing debts and moved into a small apartment across town. The downsizing was more than physical. It represented a dramatic fall in social status for people who had built their identity around appearances and material possessions. Alex's reaction to this new reality revealed his true character. After 2 weeks of living with my parents in their cramped apartment, he pronounced the situation unbearable and demanded they help him get his own place. When they explained they had no more resources to give, he lashed out, accusing them of favoring me and ruining his life. The cruel irony of his accusation was apparently lost on all of them. With nowhere else to turn, Alex reluctantly took a job at a warehouse but quit after 3 weeks, claiming the manager had it out for him. He cycled through 3 more jobs with similar results. The pattern was always the same: initial enthusiasm, followed by complaints about unfair treatment, culminating in him quitting before he could be fired. In a final desperate attempt to avoid responsibility, Alex reached out to my husband's wealthy parents, spinning a tale about needing a small loan to get back on his feet. He had met them exactly twice at family gatherings, yet felt entitled to approach them for financial support. When they politely declined, he accused them of playing favorites and suggested they were only willing to help their biological family. Daniel's parents, bewildered by this entitled behavior from a virtual stranger, reported the incident to us. Last I heard, Alex was crashing on a friend's couch, still waiting for someone to rescue him from adulthood. The friend, increasingly frustrated with the one-sided arrangement, had given him 30 days to find his own place. The final confrontation came when my parents requested a meeting to discuss the future. Hoping for reconciliation, I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I should have known better. Within minutes, it became clear their only interest was financial. They needed money for a security deposit on a better apartment. Alex was depressed and needed therapy they couldn't afford. Wouldn't I want to help my own brother? I set my terms clearly. I would consider rebuilding our relationship if they acknowledged their favoritism, apologized for the exploitation, and agreed to family counseling. Financial support would only be discussed after significant progress in therapy. My mother's face hardened. "So you'll abandon your own brother when he's suffering after all we've done for you?" What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. Name one sacrifice you made for my benefit that didn't ultimately serve you or Alex. The silence was deafening. My father finally spoke, his voice cold. If that's how you feel, we have nothing more to discuss. They chose Alex and their own pride over healing our relationship. As they walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had offered a path forward based on honesty and mutual respect. Their rejection confirmed I'd made the right decision in protecting myself and my son from their toxic influence. Today, my chosen family provides the love and support my biological one never could. Daniel remains my steadfast partner, Jackson is thriving in school, and Grandmother Rose fills our home with wisdom and unconditional love. We've befriended neighbors and colleagues who demonstrate what healthy relationships look like, creating a community based on genuine care rather than obligation or exploitation. The family who truly loves you will never reduce you to your financial value. They'll celebrate your successes without resentment, support you through failures without judgment, and value your presence more than your provisions. I didn't learn this lesson from my parents. I learned it by becoming the parent they never were. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who should have protected you from needing boundaries in the first place. But I've discovered something powerful in this painful journey, the ability to break generational patterns of toxicity and create something beautiful from the wreckage. My son will never know what it feels like to be valued only for what he provides. And in ensuring that, I've finally found my own worth beyond the cash cow my parents tried to reduce me to.